is sponsored by GE Aviation, No Starch Press, CBTS, CyberArk, Booz Allen Hamilton, Dark Rhino Security, Endgame, RSA, and US Bank. Join the conversation. Tweet us at BSides Cincy. The presentation will begin shortly. BSides Cincinnati 2018 is sponsored by GE Aviation, No Starch Press, CBTS, CyberArk, Booz Allen Hamilton, Dark Rhino Security, Endgame, RSA, and US Bank. Join the conversation. Tweet us at BSides Cincy. The presentation will begin shortly. BSides Cincinnati 2018 is sponsored by GE Aviation, No Starch Press, CBTS, CyberArk, Booz Allen Hamilton, Dark Rhino Security, Endgame, RSA, and US Bank. Join the conversation. Tweet us at BSides Cincy. The presentation will begin shortly. BSides Cincinnati 2018 is sponsored by GE Aviation, No Starch Press, CBTS, CyberArk, Booz Allen Hamilton, Dark Rhino Security, Endgame, RSA.
We're going to get going with the last talk of the day. We've got Jerod Brennen here. He's going to be doing a talk on hacking identity, Pen Tester's Guide to IAM. So it should be a fascinating one. Take it away.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Almost. All right. Hey, folks.
Cincinnati 2018.
We'll get you out of here early, which I dig because I've got some family stuff going on tonight. I'm going to show up early. I'm going to win Dad of the Year. So I'm down here out of Columbus. Number one, I am madly in love with this venue. I'm a filmmaker. I've got almost 30 credits on IMDb. Yeah, the folks who will put this con together, kudos. And not just the venue and the bar, but the music that's been playing in between every. I'm serious. I am loving every piece of it. And I've got my whiskey for my talk, so I'm in a good way. My talk comes from the almost 20 years of InfoSec I've got under my belt at this point. I went to school, drop that, use this. To be a music teacher, my path into InfoSec is probably a lot like some of yours. You just kind of end up here. We get to break the law and we get paid for it, which I dig. I was raised in a way that I'm not going to break the law to do things malicious to hurt people, but I am insanely curious. So thank God I've got a job that lets me get away with that. The talk that I put together here is a blend of my SecOps days. I used to manage InfoSec at Abercrombie & Fitch. When I was there, we deployed an identity and access management system to manage everybody. And at A&F, they go through probably around $250,000 IDs each year. Number one, retail always has high turnover around holiday season. Number two, when they tell you they're hiring you to be an Abercrombie model, and on day one you show up and go, I'm here, take my picture, and they say no, fold t-shirts. People get pissed, they leave. But you still have to provision an account and then deprovision that account right away. So I got some hands-on identity and access management experience, and I've done a lot of penetration testing. I'm more of a web app pen tester, so I really dug the active defense stuff we were just looking at. But what I've learned in pen testing today, it is much more likely if you hire the right shop, and I work for a vendor, but we don't do pen testing, so I'm not selling any of that here. I'm just saying my professional recommendation is that if you find a shop that doesn't do vulnerability scans as part of their pen test, check them out. Because if somebody's just flipping you a Nessus report, it's not a pen test, folks. It's a vulnerability assessment. They're very different. But if somebody is coming at your organization and they're emulating an attacker who doesn't want to get caught, they're not going to run noisy, stupid scans. They're going to trip defenses. They're going to go right after identity. And I worked on pen tests with people who can go from unauthorized outsider to domain admin by lunchtime on the very first day, which makes it very awkward for the customer to say, well, we've still got 2 weeks.
Cincinnati,
what else do you want us to do? And the way he does that, the way we get through and take over these organizations is by going after identity. So I want to share some information with you that's both sides of the fence. What do you need to know about identity and access management? What do you need to know about pen testing? And what are things that you can take back to your own organizations? First thing I'm going to tell you, the slides are up on SlideShare and SpeakerDeck, the GitHub version of SlideShare. I deliberately designed my slides to have way too much information in them. So I'm going to talk crazy fast. I'm going to have more things than you can write down. I've had people taking pictures when I'm up here. If you want to do that, I'm cool. I know I'm very sexy. Take all the pictures you need. But all the information in the slides you can download right now if you want. F5, they published a report in December, and they're a security vendor. They're doing it as part of their, this is why you should buy our stuff. As somebody who works for a vendor, I understand that not all vendors are evil. It's really just some of the people who work at vendors are evil. But if you get in a relationship with the right vendor, they can really help you out. F5 is taking this agnostic approach to say, we took a look at a decade's worth of data breaches, and here are the patterns, here are the trends. It's a great complement to the Verizon data breach investigations report. And what they found is that in 86% of the breaches they investigated, applications, so internet-facing web apps, and identities were the initial attack vector. That's what attackers are going after, because if I can exploit an application weakness, or if I can get a regular set of user creds, I can get into your organization. That's the first domino. The reason this is, in my experience, is number one, there is way too much information about us online. And we voluntarily, Cambridge Analytica, publish this information out to organizations that will abuse it. If you don't do open source intelligence gathering, do it. OSINT is sexy, it's fun, and if you do it right, it doesn't show up in anybody's logs. It's just going out to public resources and saying, what can you tell me about an organization? Who works for the organization? How do they log in? What systems do they interact with? We also have a problem with people oversharing on social media and using your corporate email on sites that don't have anything to do with your company. If you're familiar with the Ashley Madison hack, where all those credential sets were exposed. If there is one website where you want to be discreet, it's Ashley Madison. And people were using the first name dot last name at company.com to register and set up their account. That's a whole different kind of stupid, but I'm not going to judge. Publicly available system information is a necessary part of how the internet works. If I have a computer that has my stuff on it and I want to talk to your computer and it's got your stuff on it, they have to share DNS, they have to share IP, they have to go through all the hops and the ISPs and everything that makes the internet means these systems have to be sharing certain information. And you as an attacker, if you're red team, you can use that information to your advantage. And the increasing reliance on software as a service is breaking some of our policies around identity and access management. If my directory lives on my premise and I can control who can see it and who can get to it, great. But what about all these websites that we're logging into to do our jobs that the identity and access management team can't see, can't control, can't touch? If I want people to use strong passwords, I can go into AD and say this is the password complexity policy. I can't do that on the software as a service site where I don't have administrative rights. So all of these things combined have created an attack surface that makes the blue team's job a lot harder. And so the more sophisticated attackers, which again I love on the active defense, you talk about popping the CPUs, that's a red flag right away. Right? If I am coming at an organization and I get into the organization and I'm real noisy with a pair of credentials that I've stolen, you're going to catch me right away. But if I fly low and slow, I can sit on your network for years and I can abuse that access to continually siphon data. So it's not just all the credit cards that you have in your database today, it's every credit card that you take from the day I capture that credential set until you find out that I'm on your network. And to further complicate it, pen testing and again, that more sophisticated attack methodology has become a repeatable process. It's not guesswork anymore. This is the actual process that I follow when I'm running a pen test now. And you'll see that when I do my first step, OSINT gathering, the very next thing I go after are credentials. Because once I've got a set of regular user credentials, I can get into applications that sit on web servers that are internet facing. I can get into SSL, VPN portals. I can get into webmail portals. And once I get in with a regular set of user credentials, I'm going to look around, gather what I can, and try to elevate my privilege. And then I'm going to jump to another box. And then I'm going to see if I can elevate my privilege until I get to domain admin and control the entire network. And none of this information is new. When I talk about password spraying, which I'm going to talk about in just a bit, that's years old. This information is being researched and developed. Tools to automate these techniques are being published to GitHub on an increased frequency, on an increasing basis, which again puts the blue teamers at an unfair disadvantage. But what I'm hoping to share with you today is enough information that you can take it back and start using it right away to harden your own defenses, to help protect your organizations better, and if anything, to make it easier for you to do your job. First thing I want to breeze through is a quick identity and access management primer. I mentioned this deck is on SlideShare. I've also got a deck that I shared with the Greater Cincy ISSA a few years back that's longer and gets into identity and access management in a little more detail. We've got our 3-letter acronyms, our 4-letter acronyms. The ones I want to point out,
Cincinnati,
on the right-hand side, LDAP is when you tell an application to authenticate against Active Directory. Instead of having like a local database that keeps Jerod is J12345 and this is his password, I'm just going to go against Active Directory or some other LDAP store and say, look, I already set him up as a user there. Check there and see what his username and password is. That'll prove that Jerod is really who he says he is. Once somebody is authenticated, there's this concept of authorization, which is, okay, Jerod's proven that he's really Jerod. What is he allowed to get to? What is he allowed to see? And those are two areas, folks, two distinct areas where the defenders have to control, right? I have to put the right controls in place to make sure the passwords are strong enough to keep people out who shouldn't be logging in. I have to change default passwords. I have to put two-factor, some kind of multi-factor in play to make it harder for people to authenticate who aren't really Jerod, but want to trick me into believing that they are. But then in the identity and access management space, to be able to know, well, what should Jerod have access to? Is a very difficult problem to solve. You say, well, Jerod works on the security team. He should have access to the security stuff. Okay, well, what is the security stuff? And Jerod isn't just a security team member. He's an employee. He's got HR. He's got benefits. He's got all this stuff he needs to do just to get paid. What should he have access to there? What about all these little internal
Cincinnati
company announcements and that company all share drive? Oh my God, that is such a great target. If Jerod is on that server, which files is he allowed to see? And it gets so complex so quickly that we just say, look, forget about it. Jerod works on the security team. Jeff has worked on the security team for 20 years. Just give Jerod all the access Jeff has. And then we perpetuate a problem, which role-based access controls is designed to defend against. Federation and single sign-on are two things that make it easier on the users. They also make it easier on the attackers. If I can get Jerod's username and password, or if I can get what allows Jerod to log into these systems, then I'll automatically log him into all these other systems. He doesn't have to know a unique set of credentials for each one. That makes lateral movement easier for the attacker. Federation lets Jerod log into websites that don't live on premise, right? If I need to go to Concur, if I need to go to AWS, if I need to go to Office 365, I'm not going to have two different Jerods. I'm just going to have one, and then I'm going to have a token that I create that says, look, I'm going to verify Jerod's identity. Here's a token. You and I have an agreement about these tokens. So if you get this token from me, you can trust that Jerod's really Jerod. He doesn't have to log in again. All of this is complex. The implementation, the management of it is not an easy task for people who do identity and access management. So we get a sprawl of usernames and passwords and databases that have all these credentials. In the IAM space, there's this concept of entitlements. What does Jerod have access to? And to give Jerod access to an entitlement, or give Jerod an entitlement, that's called provisioning. To take it away, that's called deprovisioning. When Jerod no longer works for the company, by God, you better deprovision his access to everything, because he no longer needs to access that, except if we work in higher education and Jerod's an alumni. Well, now it's not cut and dry. Right now it's complex. Or what if we're in healthcare and Jerod's a doctor? Well, how do I manage Jerod's access there? So there's a whole nother set of complexity that comes from just managing this user once the account's created. I pulled this from a Kuppinger Cole paper that I referenced at the end of the talk in the slide resources section. This is the generally accepted life cycle of a user. Each item on here is something that the attacker could potentially exploit and take advantage of. So user account gets created, and we provision the account so that Jerod has the ability, or the user has the ability, to authenticate and to log in. And then once we've got this account, we start to grant the entitlements, which is where authorization comes into play. Jerod gets added to Active Directory groups. Jerod gets added to that Oracle database that has to live outside of AD because it doesn't play well with the system. Now Jerod keeps calling the help desk because he needs things to be different, and we're tired of spending money on password resets and granting all this access. So we're going to put a self-service technology up to make it easier for Jerod to get his stuff, which again covers the password management. Compliance is the whole, are we really doing what we set out to do? Hopefully you're watching that and not just throwing your arms up in the air and saying, forget it, too hard. And then at the end of the day, when Jerod's relationship with the organization is no longer viable, he's moved on, he's in a different role. Even if he moves from one team to another, we have to deprovision things that aren't relevant to that user anymore. What I'd add to that is that the people who are responsible for doing these things come from a very different background. At Abercrombie, they had people who worked at the front desk. Their job was to play football and soccer and frisbee out front in the main entrance, to smile and look pretty and say, hey dude, what's up? Good kids, believed in the brand, had a job, living on their own, so I'm good with all that. When the economy tanked, it was determined that we didn't need quite as many people standing around doing that. So they said, well, but these are good people. These are good employees. We want to keep these young kids working here. What can we do with them? We need people on the help desk. Oh, perfect. As somebody who is trying to do security and build out a security program, people who didn't even understand the turn it on and off again approach to troubleshooting, it was challenging. So people who come into a help desk role, and I'm not saying that to belittle people, there were some really smart employees who grew into more mature IT professionals through that opportunity. But people who come into the help desk don't tend to be those 20-year veterans of InfoSec. They're new to the job. They're trying to figure it out. They just want to help people. They don't want to look stupid. People who work in the Security Operations Center tend to have a little more experience than the help desk folks. They're a little more security-centric, but they're also looking at log data over and over and over. And so their job can get a little monotonous. They can tend to miss some of the things, which our keynote, Danny was talking about this morning, how he was saying, oh, MS-DOS, don't worry about it. So it's a different skill set. It's a different mindset. And then the security team, these are folks who've probably been at it for a while, your analysts, your architects, your engineers. They may be the ones actually managing the identity and access management technology. They're going to get the escalations from the help desk and from the SOC. So you tell me, if you're an attacker, who are you going to attack first? Which group are you going to go after first? Where are you going to have the highest likelihood of success? Right, it stands out. So this is important information for you to know, both as the red teamers, the pen testers, and the blue teamers. Who needs a little more TLC when it comes to managing this tech? So let me dive into the identity-based attacks. This is where the talk gets super sexy. Take as many notes as you want. Ask me about it after. When I do a pen test, I treat it like a funnel in terms of how I allot my time. I'm a big fan of the penetration testing execution standard, the PTES. If you don't know it, look it up. PTES is gold still today. And when I say that, if I have 5 days on a pen test, 3 days are on intelligence gathering. I'm not even going to start attacking an organization until I get to day 4, because I want to know as much as I can about the people, the systems, the technology stack. I want to learn how they make money. I want to learn what stories are showing up in the news. What are the hot button items that are going to make my social engineering attacks effective? When I do my OSINT gathering, though, I break it into 2 distinct categories, technology and people. So two websites that I love to know in, Shodan and Census. If I want to know what your internet-facing footprint is, I'm going to get almost everything I need from those 2 websites. It's going to tell me IPs, it's going to tell me host names, it's going to tell me ports, and it's never going to show up in your logs. I'm not doing an Nmap scan, I'm not doing a vulnerability scan. I'm just going to a website and saying, hey, what do you already know about this target organization? Complement that with findsubdomains.com. This is a relatively new resource, at least I've just started using it. It's amazing. It shows you all those other not www websites, all the web applications that are external facing, all the dev systems that people didn't turn off, what your mail login is, everything that you might attack as a web app pen tester is there. Hurricane Electric BGP Toolkit is hit or miss for me. I still like it. It shows systems and so IP and host names within certain net blocks, but they have a limitation of only 1,000 results. And so if I'm attacking a large organization, I get garbage. I can't use it, but it still can be a useful resource. And SPF records. I want to look at who you trust to send email to and from. These are your software as a service solution providers. These are going to be some of your security technologies. If you're using Gmail for your corporate email, I'm going to see that you trust like Gmail and Google Mail by looking in your SPF records. So if I just use those 5 websites, I can paint a very complete picture of your internet-facing footprint. And then when it comes to people, right, I'm looking for credentials. I'm looking for stuff that I can use to log into all the tech I just found. LinkedIn is a gold mine. And not only can I find who works at a company, how long they've been there, and every promotion they've had in the time that they've worked there, but if they've worked on any big projects, if they manage certain technologies, they're going to put that in their profile so that recruiters can see that when they want to offer them all the cash. So LinkedIn gives me a really great picture of who works at an organization. Hunter is an email lookup tool, so I can find email addresses that belong to people. If nothing else, I get your email format. Is it first initial, last name? Is it first name dot last name? Is it a random set of numbers that nobody should know outside of your organization? hunter.io knows. So I can get useful email addresses. Pastebin is where I go to find the credentials that have already been popped. I was on a pen test earlier this year, and I found a username on Pastebin and an MD5 hash of a password associated with that. It was an email address. The email address was a corporate email address, but it wasn't indicative of a compromise of a corporate system. So this person was using this email address on some other website. That website got popped, and the person who had the password dump put a subset on Pastebin to say, look, I've got the goods. If you want the rest of it, send X number of Bitcoin or portions of a Bitcoin to this address. An MD5 reverse lookup tool, and I found that the password was that and a little more recon. It was the name of one of her kids. And she had entered the name 6 characters, all alpha. So I knew it wasn't a corporate credential set because it would never pass password complexity, but it was a software as a service option. So any website that I could find that this organization was using, now I had a username and password I could use to log in, and I hadn't even touched any of the company's systems yet. Intel Techniques, does anybody know this website? Michael Fazel? It's fantastic. If you're going to check it out, give yourself like a full weekend because it's so much information. It's my go-to resource for all things OSINT.
Cincinnati 2018.
He's got a lot of tools out there that you can just plug and search. And when it comes to searching social media sites and doing personal OSINT gathering, it's a great stop. Recon NG, Tim Tomes premiered that tool a few years back at a couple of cons, and he was showing FBI.gov credential sets, email address and password, without ever touching an FBI system because he had automated a lot of the OSINT gathering techniques. Discover from Lee Baird builds, it's like on the shoulders of giants, right? It takes all the work that Tim did on Recon NG and automates it and makes this nice, sexy report. But if you want a set of email addresses that you could start attacking right away with an organization, Discover will get you that in a matter of seconds. And it'll get you all this other stuff. I recommend doing everything manually so you get a feel for how does this stuff work, what am I looking for, you can start to make sense of it. But as soon as you can get Discover up and running on Kali, it's a quick install, simple Python script, you'll never look back. It's so good. You can also find useful information about identities in document metadata. So I publish earnings reports, I publish marketing slips, I publish all these things that I want my end users to be able to see so that I can interact with the people I'm trying to serve. MetaGoofle is already built into Kali. I like Foca. Foca is a Windows-based tool from 11 Paths. They both do the same thing. You pull down all the documents that live on a particular website or domain. You go through and pull out all the metadata, analyze the metadata, and then say, are there any usernames in here? Are there any passwords in here? Are there any internal IP addresses or internal server names? Foca has not let me down yet. So it's from an OSINT gathering perspective, now you're going from passive, where you're not showing up in the logs, to semi-passive. You're showing up, but are they really looking at who's downloading all the files from their website? Some people might see the volume in traffic and throw out some alarms. But a lot of folks might not be looking at it at all. So use one of those tools or both, depending on your comfort level, and pull out document metadata to see what you can add to the OSINT you gathered from the previous tools. So what are we looking for? Once you understand the technology stack, start looking for user guides. If you find any internet-facing management tools, right? Log into the email filter, log into the firewall, log into the IPS IDS. Stuff shouldn't be on the internet for anybody to log into, but it is. And if you find it, you go in the admin guide and look for the default username and password. I cannot tell you how many times I have accelerated a pen test by using default creds from an admin guide. It is the most script kiddie, basic, simple, incredibly effective attack you can use. But you have to pull the technology stack. You have to know what the technology footprint looks like if you're going to know what admin guides to pull down. Look for new hire and new user information, because there are two key pieces of information you can pull out of that. Number one, how do I log into the VPN?
RSA.
Help desk is tired of taking that call. They know that the people aren't on the
And
network
US
when they
Bank.
need to log into the VPN.
Join the
So
conversation.
you will still
Tweet us
find
at
organizations that have
BSides
published how-to guides
The
to the internet.
presentation will
That's
begin
great
shortly.
resources for the red teamers, for the attackers. Also, when you are first created as an employee, your default
BSides
password will be
Cincinnati
X.
2015
You have to change it
is
immediately
sponsored
upon
by
logon. Hopefully they've got that going for them.
Aviation.
But if you can figure out what
No
the
starch press.
password looks like for the help desk, if it's
CBTS.
company 1, what are the
CyberArk.
chances that company 2 is going to be the password that they changed it to?
Booz
Go to
Allen
LinkedIn,
Hamilton.
look at how long they've worked for the
Dark
company,
Rhino
and
Security.
then increment that number for every 3 months,
End
right?
game.
Every time a password change is required.
RSA.
And you can guess legitimate passwords for people who don't want to be bothered.
US
They
Bank.
just take the default one and create
Join
some
the
minor
conversation.
variation.
Tweet us at
You're going to get the
BSides
username
Cincy.
and convention I mentioned in the
presentation
email
will begin
addresses or maybe in the user guide. And then login portals. I want to know how to get to their webmail. I want to know how to get to their SSL
BSides
VPN.
Cincinnati
And I want to know how to get to their
2018 is
password
sponsored by
self-service.
GE
Which I'll
Aviation.
talk about that in a minute too.
Starch
Password
press.
spraying. How many people know what I'm talking about here?
CBTS.
Good. Everybody
CyberArk.
else, look this up. Play around with it. It's super fun and
Booz
super sexy.
Allen Hamilton.
And it's like, what is it, Panther
Dark
Piss from
Rhino
Ron
Security.
Burgundy? It's that effective. So
game.
instead of, I'm going to take
RSA.
one username and throw 10,000 passwords at it, which are going,
And
I'm going to get
US
shut
Bank.
down within the first 5 failed
Join
logins
the
because they've got a
conversation.
lockout policy.
Tweet us at
And I'm going to
BSides
trigger all the
Cincy.
alerts saying, hey,
The
you've locked out this
presentation will
account,
begin
somebody's doing
shortly.
something malicious. Flip it. I'm going to take every username I gathered from OSINT gathering, and I'm just going to try one
BSides
password.
Cincinnati
Because how many of you lock
2018
out your
is
users
sponsored
after
by
one failed login?
GE Aviation.
I guarantee you wouldn't work at the same company you were working for
No
today
starch
if that was
press.
your policy.
CBTS.
NTLM Botherer is a
CyberArk.
Python script. There are a few repos on GitHub, and I have to confess, I'm
Booz
not sure
Allen
which one's the main one, so
Dark
buyer
Rhino
beware.
Security.
You can use NTLM Botherer to automate this from command
End
line
game.
by throwing some of these
RSA.
passwords at a Microsoft
And
web
US
service.
Bank.
And I've got that here, the
Join
command
the
in here if you want to
conversation.
check it out.
Tweet us
If
at
you're familiar with
BSides
Burp,
Cincy.
Burp is good for doing a
presentation
similar
will
attack
begin
against
shortly.
web apps. And the password list I have over here, I was up in Michigan yesterday and I didn't change the
BSides
password
Cincinnati
list. Nobody got on me about it,
2018 is
but I don't care.
sponsored by GE Aviation.
Local sports teams are an in.
No starch
If
press.
I'm down here, you better believe it's going to be some variation of
CBTS.
Cincy, Cincinnati Reds. When I
CyberArk.
go up north, it's Cavs, Cavaliers, Indians.
Booz
If I'm in
Allen
Columbus,
Hamilton.
it's Bucks, Buckeyes,
Dark
Brutus.
Rhino Security.
You will get a set of credentials if you can find the right
End
combination here. But don't even
RSA.
start with that. Start with what's the season.
And US
Because
Bank.
if we are requiring users
Join the
to create an
conversation.
8-character
Tweet us at
password,
BSides
one
Cincy.
upper, one lower,
The
numbers
presentation
special,
will begin shortly.
I guarantee you've got somebody at your company right now who's using summer 2018 exclamation point as their password. And why is
BSides
that?
Cincinnati
Because in 3 months when the
2018 is
seasons change,
sponsored
they know
by
that they're going to be able to remember what the next
GE
password
Aviation.
is. You'd be surprised at how many
No
accounts you
starch
can
press.
compromise with a simple password spraying attack
CBTS.
and the seasonal
CyberArk.
password. Once you get in, if I can get that set of
Booz
user
Allen
creds, if I can find an SSL VPN, if I
Dark
can,
Rhino
heck,
Security.
if physical is in scope, and I can get a box on the internal
End game.
network, and I've grabbed some of these creds from the outside,
RSA.
now I want to steal other creds
And US
or
Bank.
forge tickets. So I'm
Join
not
the
going to go into
conversation.
detail about
Tweet
Kerber
us
roasting
at
in this talk.
BSides
I'm
Cincy.
covering a lot, so
presentation
there are a
will
lot of
begin
YouTube
shortly.
videos and write-ups on how to do this stuff, but the attacks and tools I recommend you look into. Learn how to use
BSides
Mimikatz.
Cincinnati
Learn how to pull
2018
creds out
is
of
sponsored by
memory and hashes out of
GE
memory.
Aviation.
Learn how to use Kerberos. And learn
starch
how to use
press.
PowerShell and specifically PowerShell Empire.
CBTS.
So PowerShell is not an attack tool,
CyberArk.
but I would argue that every pen tester worth his or her salt
Booz
is
Allen
learning
Hamilton.
how to use PowerShell effectively
Dark
in their
Rhino
attacks.
Security.
Why is that? Windows 10, Microsoft is throwing PowerShell
End
everywhere. And it's great for
RSA.
admins. Right? It automates a lot. It gives you so much control over your environment.
US
It gives you
Bank.
the ability to do more
Join
with
the
less.
conversation.
It's
Tweet
great
us
for pen
at
testers.
BSides Cincy. The presentation
Once
will
somebody's
begin
in and they
shortly.
get another set of creds, there's a cool tool called PowerUp in the PowerSploit framework.
BSides
PowerUp will look at
2018
processes that are running on a box that you've owned. And if it finds a box, and I'm going to butcher the explanation here, or finds a process that it can hook into and then run commands with the same privileges that that process is running. If that process is running at elevated privilege, you can use that as kind of a backdoor to sneak commands into the operating system to create your own user accounts or change passwords. Super sexy, super fun. But if you're in on an internal network as an attacker, I would have these 4 tools in your toolkit. But don't underestimate the value of social engineering. It's worked for years, folks. It's going to keep working for years. I want to point out the date on this tweet. I know it's difficult to read. June 4th, 2016. So this tweet will be celebrating its 2-year birthday, and it's talking about using social engineering to bypass two-factor authentication. Sending a text to a user who you know is getting that two-factor code when you're logging into their account and saying, hey, just reply to the text with your code. We're doing a security thing. Don't sweat it. It's rock simple, but if you time it appropriately, then suddenly the message that two-factor solves all our problems, not exactly. Awareness training still carries a ton of value. Social engineering attack scenarios. Anybody recognize this guy? Yes, you do, right? Our president's one-time doctor. If you don't know him, there's some great videos out there. Just look them up, have some fun. I have circled the sticky note on his monitor. I pulled this picture from his Facebook profile. Still his picture. Try as I might, I have not been able to read what's written on that sticky note. But we still see passwords on sticky notes, on monitors, under keyboards. If you have physical site recon and scope for a pen test, which I saw somebody, I think it was Danny on his Twitter feed, has a picture and it says the Mjolnir of social engineering, and it's a clipboard. Right? If you can get on site and pretend you're supposed to be there, just walk around and look at all the whiteboards. I guarantee there's somewhere between whiteboards and sticky notes, you'll find a password. Help desk, social engineering phone call. When you call the help desk and pretend to be the end user, again, these are people who might be new to the industry, new to the job, and they are hired because they are helpful. They are compensated because they are helpful. They do not get in trouble when they help people who are frustrated and in a hurry. Take advantage of that. You can get them to reset passwords, set up accounts for you. Or the one, I still feel terrible with this. I am not a good social engineer. I have a tough time lying to people. My kid's an actor. He can kill it. I cannot. I had to do a social engineering test once where I'm calling up this company and I said, hi, we're so-and-so, and we're a third-party technology integrator working on behalf of, and I named a third party that I found they were related to through my OSINT gathering. I said, we're building a website to integrate one of our systems with your network, and your boss gave me your name as somebody who I should set up in the system. If you could give me your username and password, I'll go ahead and get you set up and make sure everything's good to go. That way you don't have to remember a whole different password. This was my spiel. Fortunately, the company was really good at it because I don't want to admit that I suck. But I didn't get anybody to fall for that. But look at your own organization. Could you put a similar scenario together with a few nuances that one phone call and you get somebody to offer up username and password with no question? I'm going through Kevin Mitnick's books. What is it? Ghost in the Wires, Ghost on the Wires. It says, yeah, Ghost on the Wire. His autobiography. I'm doing an audiobook right now as I'm in the car. And it amazes me how much he was able to do over the years through simple phone calls. Everything was social engineering. He knew the tech behind the phone companies, but so much win was social engineering. So if you're not crazy introverted like me and you like talking to people on the phone, that's a vector. Or password reset notifications for software as a service apps. If you know that they're logging into Salesforce, if they're logging into Gmail, you can use the Social Engineers Toolkit to clone an exact version of that login page, and then with the right fish flags, you can get them to go to your website, your login page, and get them to give you credentials which Set will write to a text file on your target system. So you can grab user identities, you can grab credentials through multiple social engineering attack scenarios, and this is my recommended short list. What's your porn name? Anybody want to offer it up? Somebody I know, somebody in the room knows what I'm talking about. What's your porn name? How do you find it out?
Middle name and then the street you grew up on.
I had heard, and I hear we've got middle name and the street you grew up on. What do we have back here? Pet? Yeah, I'm not going to tell you mine because it works out really creepy, so I'm leaving that on the table. But it's one of these stupid online quizzes we do that, you know, we have a laugh about it, and it's fun. But now I've got two answers to your secret questions. I know your pet's name. I know the street you grew up on. If I go to mylife.com, if I go to familytree.now, do this. Look yourself up on these two websites. Don't do it now. I don't want anybody crying during the talk. You will be amazed at how much these two websites know about you and your family. I was researching one of these websites a while back, and my wife and I have known each other for the bulk of our lives. We grew up a couple of hours apart, met when we were 14. I'm not going to tell you where, secret question. But I know her really well. She knows me really well. No secrets between us. When I was looking her up on this, pull it up. What does it say about her? There's her mom, there's her family, and there's the house that I met her, that she was living in when we met. And I saw a couple of other names that I had never heard. And so I'm on one end of the couch, she's on the other, and I said, hey, what's this person? Do you know this person? And she thought for a second, she goes, oh my God, I haven't thought about that person in years. That was my babysitter when I lived on Jefferson Street. And then she said, how the hell do you know that person? No, don't worry about it. And she loves when I do stuff like that, by the way. But if you use these websites, if you go to any of those stupid quizzes, if you publish a quiz to a social media platform or through some phishing message in the guise of, hey, we're doing something fun at our organization, you can get people to divulge these secret questions. I was able to reset an employee's password on one of the pen tests that I worked on a few years back through secret questions. And it was a weird one, folks. The way they'd implemented password self-service is you would go there and you would get 2 questions out of a list of like 10, and you had 2 chances. And if you screwed up, they would lock the account and you had to call the help desk to open it up. That's pretty good. I found one person, one of the questions was, what year did you graduate high school? That's a gimme. You can find that so easily on so many people. And then the other question that I got that I got stuck on was, what was your favorite toy as a child? What was your favorite toy as a child? Could you even? I don't even know if I could answer that. Stretch Armstrong. I mean, it was really neat until you pulled him too far and the jelly leaked out. But I thought there's no way in hell I'm going to guess that. I did a little more recon, a little more OSINT gathering, found that this person worked in IT, had a website. On the website, every icon on the webpage, the favorite icon, was a little Lego head. And I thought, I think I've got it. So I popped back over to the password reset. I plugged in the year that this person graduated high school. What was your favorite toy as a child? LEGOS. Enter. What do you want your new password to be? And that is such a great and terrible feeling at the same time, right? As a pen tester, you're like, yes, this is what I set out to do. And now I have to tell him what I did. And I did. I had to change this guy's password. We were restricted to only testing in the middle of the day. And this was the second year we tested this organization. I told them, you come back to us next year, I'm going after that portal right away. Because the first year I couldn't get in. But I changed this guy's password. I got into his email. I got into the SSL VPN. I was able to pillage enough information before he even got a hold of the help desk to try to figure out what was going on, that it provided value back to the people who hired us to do the test, to say, oh yeah, I get it now. Now I've got something real. I can take the leadership. So it's a great method or vector for a red team to take advantage of. Self-registration. Is there any place, especially for consumer-facing applications, where I can create my own username and password? You're like, don't sweat it. That's just a consumer-facing app. I'm not worried about it. I I did a pen test once where a client was using Drupal as their underlying CMS. Am I using the right term there for Drupal? Thank you. And they created a custom module to allow their users to self-register for the website. I'm poking around using, I don't know if I was in Burp, or I tend to use Tamper Data. It's a Firefox plugin. It's outdated, but it still gets the job done. And I was just watching the traffic go back and forth, and I was able to see that I could put my email address in as a username, but in the gets and posts behind the scene, my username was actually a series of numbers. I'm like, all right, well, numbers are sequential. What happens if I look at somebody who has the number before me and I could see somebody else's information? And I thought, they've missed an authorization control here. They have not protected one user from another because they don't think somebody's going to be using these numbers. They think it's hidden from the end users. So I just started going back and back and back. And if you know anything about Drupal, what's ID 0? Played around with that one? Sorry?
Rhino Security.
Not quite. ID 0 for a user account is like in Drupal, there's like a super admin who's like even better than the admin. It's the super admin account. I got all the way back to that user, and what I found when I was testing out the other users is I could change passwords. If I pulled up an account pretending to be a different user, I could just go to the password reset screen, plug in a new password, and then I could own that user's account. And I'm like, I'm going to take over their whole environment. Tried it, didn't work. Because Drupal at least is smart enough to say we're not going to let people reset the super admin password from the web page. So I went to ID number 1. ID number 2, ID number 3. Who are the most likely people to get the first IDs in any new application? The developers, the people who are writing this application, the people who have all the access. And I was able to pop an administrative level account that had been copied from the super admin account and given to one of the web dev admins so they could manage this website. So if there is a self-registration portal, even if it's on the consumer side, you can still take over an entire application by compromising the identities, the other identities in that portal. And I love the fact that we had the responder demo earlier. This is another gimme on any pen test. If you're on the internal network and you fire up responder, because so many people are using Active Directory, you will get creds pop up in here. So I'm not going to tell you how to use it because I'm still learning. There's some things I know and some things, like I said, web apps, I'm all good. There's some tools in the Kali set that I'm still getting my head around. But what I know is that any pen test I do going forward, Responder is going to get me valid credentials on the inside if I use it. If you are authorized to do so, use Responder on your own internal network and see what happens. You might find that you have opportunities to improve how your network shares identity info. So again, it only takes one set of creds, and I've just given you a whole series of attacks that I highly recommend you launch against your own organizations as a planned, well communicated. Don't go home and do this tonight. Make sure you've got all the approvals. Make sure everybody knows what you're doing. But check and see how well you can identify these attacks and defend against these attacks. How vulnerable are you to these attacks, so that you can then start to implement the right controls. Whether you start at the end, start at the beginning, I don't care where you start. I do recognize that every organization that we work for has grown organically. There's no ivory tower perfect security. We're going to do it exactly how NIST says it, or exactly how PCI says it, or exactly how anybody says it. So we have gaps, we have issues. You have to pick and choose your battles. Start with, in my opinion, what are going to be small successes. Something that you can do that is ridiculously inexpensive and incredibly useful is just spend some time analyzing your own attack surface and painting the picture of what you look like to somebody outside of your organization. Use all those OSINT gathering tools I shared earlier and put together a little write-up, a little report. Did you know that we have multiple non-production systems that are internet-facing? Did you know that we have an SSL VPN that doesn't require two-factor authentication, that if an attacker were to use Responder to exploit our Outlook web access interface, they could then log in and get to all these systems. Take some time to put context around it. Make this stuff real. Don't just go with the scare tactics. And because you are authorized, hopefully within your organization, if not you, then somebody that you work with, you can do the port scans. You can do the vulnerability scans, and you can add even more weight and more value to the potential risk. So it's not just the identities, but maybe you'll find systems that didn't show up in the OSINT gathering that, thank God you found it before they did, right? So analyze your attack surface and then reduce it. I'm going to take a drink. First and foremost, if you don't need something sitting on the internet, get rid of it. Simple firewall rule changes to shut down ports, to shut down access to systems. That dev system, QA system that the testers wanted to expose to the third party who's testing your web apps doesn't need to be open to everybody on the internet 24/7. It needs to be open to the people who are testing during approved testing windows. Put controls in place to make sure that your attack surface is as hard and crunchy as we've been trying to make our perimeter. Perimeter still counts, folks. Remove unnecessary files on the internet. And replace existing files where you might have issues of metadata leakage. Some of the other things I don't get into in this talk so much, you'll find backup files, you'll find config files, php.info, right? Or phpinfo.php. You'll find files that are artifacts of application deployments and tool installations. Pull all that down, get rid of it. Disable inactive accounts. I don't care if somebody insists that they might need to use that account someday, so let's just leave it alone for now. If an account is not actively being used by an employee, by a contractor, by a volunteer, disable it. You can always turn it back on when they need it. Even better, especially with people who are intentionally short-term workforce members, the day you turn on a contractor account, automatically configure that account to disable on the date that the contract is set to expire. Because when the project ends early and the manager sends all the contractors home, they are not going to call the security team and say turn off this person's account. They're going to assume that stuff all happens automatically in the background, offering that from first-hand experience. So disable inactive accounts, remove unnecessary privileges. We did a penetration test. I've got a guy I work with who loves physical pen. I hate it. It makes me sick, like with anxiety, sick to my stomach. But he loves sneaking into places. And we had a shop where physical pen was in scope. So day one, he said he was going to roll in around 8. And sure enough, 8:05, I get the call. Hey, Jerod, I want to let you know, I got in the office on the first floor. I'm going to see if I can find a cube and camp out where they'll leave me alone. I said, get the hell out of there. That's not the client. He had gone into the location was like a colo, right? There were multiple tenants in one building. And in all fairness, this tenant was related to the client, so I can see how he made that assumption. But he broke into an office he wasn't authorized to break into. So he's like, oh yeah, cool. All right, I'll call you back. So he called me back 2 minutes later, and he's like, okay, I'm in the right place now. I'm going to see if I can hang out. And he stayed there. It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I get another call from him. He says, all right, so I'm killing it here, but I'm hungry and I have to pee. So I'm going to see if I can sneak out, get some lunch, go to the bathroom, and break in again. And he did. And so over the course of a day, he broke in 3 times. And when I say broke in, it was tailgating. It was rock simple. Just smile, ask somebody if they can hold the door for you, follow them in. He took IDs that he got from the internet attack, because we did some external recon. Regular user accounts that shouldn't have excessive privileges, and said, number one, he was able to get the social security number for everybody who worked for the company currently and previously
Join the
because
conversation.
HR was
Tweet
using
us
the company
at
all share
BSides
and spreadsheets to manage
presentation
new
will
hires.
begin shortly.
So he didn't even need escalated privileges. But when he did get escalated privileges, he got into their VMware
BSides
infrastructure
Cincinnati
and started stealing all their
2018
VM guests.
sponsored by
And he said at one point, he said, yeah, I should have brought a bigger hard drive. I'm out of space. I can't take everything. I'm like, that's all right. I think you've got enough for the report. Just call it a day and we'll wrap it up. But you need to look at what people have access to and work with business owners and work with application owners to say, is this appropriate? I know that everybody and their mom wants access to the data center. They don't need it. I know that holds true for these files on the company all share. Maybe they should be on the HR share where only people on the HR team have access. So there's going to be some cleanup on the inside. And then once you do that once, don't assume that you're done, because it's going to keep slipping. So you've got to implement a user attestation process where you say, okay, this is what Jerod has access to today. I'm going to hit you up in 3 months and let you know what's changed. And you let me know whether or not that's okay. Implement multi-factor, because even though multi-factor can be defeated with social engineering, multi-factor will shut down brute force attacks, password spraying attacks, just stupid password guessing attacks, unless somebody goes that extra step. You want to make it as hard as possible for the attacker to be successful. And multi-factor on VPN, multi-factor on software as a service applications that support it. Not all of them, but the ones that host the really sensitive information. Those are the ones you care about. And even on-prem apps. If you are hosting your payroll data on-premise, I've seen organizations attacked where the attacker will get into somebody's payroll self-service portal and say, hey, I don't want my direct deposit going to this bank account, I want it going to that one. And by redirecting that money, it's usually, if you're me, you find out one paycheck, hey, it's Friday, I want paid. But there are some applications on premise where you might see value in multi-factor. And then security awareness training. I don't believe users are stupid. I believe that they're not hired to be security professionals. And I have seen firsthand evidence that they're actually pretty smart, because if they want to get around the controls you put in place, they'll figure it out, folks. So take time to find a way that works in communicating to these users. When I worked at the Ohio State University, their security awareness training was featured on a news story on ABC a month or two ago. And they get into demographics. They try to understand this population of students versus adjunct faculty versus tenured faculty versus technical employees versus non-technical employees. How do they consume information? Do they use Facebook? Who uses Facebook? I'm not going to look you up. Who's Twitter? Right? Instagram? Right? The way we consume data through social media is different. But if you start asking your people, you'll find that maybe that 1 hour training video is kind of lame and people aren't watching it. But the little 5-minute comedy video, the snaps, right? Get a snap story going. There are ways to communicate with people above and beyond talking at them. So please spend time doing security awareness training. And the 3 things I would bake into that to help defend against these identity-based attacks: tell them not to use corporate email for personal websites. Publicly shame people whose names are in the Ashley Madison hack. And not them, though. If their name shows up, that gets real weird. But show them that as an example. Talk about oversharing on social media. Dayton, the Ohio Information Security Conference each year. A number of years back, they had the CTO, I think it was, from Brown University. And he was talking about freshman orientation. I love this to no end. He said when the freshmen come on campus and they're with their parents and they're excited about what they're getting ready to start, they come in for this orientation video, and it's like a room like this, a screen like this, and they just start playing the most embarrassing social media pictures they have found on all these kids. And what they do is they pull them from their social media profiles, blur out the faces so nobody else in the room knows what's going on, but that kid, they know, right? They see the friends, they see the location, like, oh my God, I thought mom and dad were never going to find out about that. The reason he does this is to say, look, someday it's going to be a potential employer. It's going to be somebody looking to say, hey, I want to bring you on for a job, but if this is how you act, that's not how we act here. And that's not to say you don't have to act that way. Just don't tell everybody. Don't be so blatant about it. So teach them about oversharing on social media and show them some of these password-based attacks and how people can reset their password based on what they pull from their Facebook profile. And teach them how to detect and respond to social engineering attacks. Do not engage the social engineer. Never. Never. You might want to say, haha, you're stupid. I see what you're doing here. But as soon as you do that, you have taken the bait, and then they will continue to target you and continue to engage you. And I can tell you, as somebody who has done social engineering, those are the people I go after. Teach them how to identify phishing messages, phishing texts, smishing, which I hate as a word, but teach them how to respond, teach them who to tell internally, maybe even incentivize them, have contests who can identify the most phish over this quarter. You'll get a $25 Amazon gift card. Oh my God, you have more email coming in than you know what to do with. But at $25 is nothing. Nothing from a corporate budget perspective. It is everything to the end users who are like, I'm going to get a free thing for being security aware. And then tighten up your admin privileges. Your user accounts are probably following the traditional 8-character complexity. Admin accounts, make them much more complex. Make them longer. If you can put 2FA on admin accounts, when I'm trying to escalate privileges, I'm going to fail because the tools that I use and the techniques that I use are not as effective against more challenging passwords. Anybody using Laps from Microsoft? Yes. Love this. More of this. Laps is a rock simple and free tool from Microsoft for managing local administrator accounts on workstations. If you are frustrated to no end that your users have local admin or you have the same local admin on every workstation, you can pull down Laps, learn how to use it, deploy it. Yeah.
Laps, simply group policy object that prevents a local account from reversing depending on machine.
It's called what?
Policy object that allows you to prevent a local account from reversing to another machine.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that. Catch me after. I want to give you my card.
So there's a group policy object.
I got to repeat it in the mic for that. A group policy object that prevents user accounts from traversing to other local accounts from jumping from one machine to the next. All right. I'm going to add that to my slides and then update the slide share. And see, that's why I love doing talks like this, because I learn stuff. I really appreciate that. Do you know the name of the GPO? He's going to pull it up. While he's on that, I apologize for the meme, but I live by memes. My wife hates it. My kids love it because our entire conversations are inside jokes. But the level of control you want to wrap them around your admin accounts, it comes down to cost, complexity, what are our capabilities internally for managing this. Laps is rock simple. You should have people using different accounts for administrative activities. So your domain admin should not log into their workstations with their domain admin account. They should have a user account, and then they should reserve the DA account for DA activity. So you've got options, you've got technologies you can tap into, but get your head around how to control administrative privileges while you're cleaning this up. I'm going to keep going, but as soon as you find that GPO, I'm going to jump into it. And then on the flip side, fine-tune your logging and monitoring system to let you know when something wonky is happening. Now, in order to know when something is weird, you have to know what normal looks like, and that's no small task. I am a huge advocate of the walk then run approach to security. If I'm deploying a security information management system, I don't want to turn everything on. If I'm deploying a web app firewall, I definitely don't want to enable all the rules as block rules right away. I just want to watch. right? It's going to take a little bit of time, but that's okay. You want to understand what normal looks like in your network because it's not the same from one to the next. Although there are certain outliers. Like for example, when should somebody be added to a privileged group? Well, when they have a change control ticket and permission. It's not something that should happen every day. I shouldn't have new domain admins popping up. If I do, that's a problem. If it's either an indicator of compromise or if I've just got an admin who's being stupid. But there's some basic things you can look for. And for folks who don't know him, Lenny Zeltzer has published multiple cheat sheets to his website, zeltzer.com. This one, the Security Incident Log Review Checklist, has a series of event codes. It gives you the description and the code if you want to go by regex or by numbers for web servers, network devices, Linux systems, and Windows systems. If you complement the Zeltzer cheat sheet with ultimatewindowssecurity.com, the stuff that Randy Smith has out there about all these specific codes, you don't have to put every possible code in. Just watch for when administrative privileges change. If that is the only thing you're alerting on, I guarantee you're going to catch an attacker. Because sooner or later, somebody's going to create an admin account. They're going to change the password on an existing service account, domain admin account. I mean, those are riskier because you're going to get caught. But just start with Lenny's cheat sheets. And that's rock simple, folks. That's stuff that's been tried and vetted. And then if you want to go one step further, stand up some honeypots. Use honey creds and honey tokens. I've got 2 tools out here that will help automate some of that. But try creating a domain admin account that has that SID 500 that's going to look like an actual admin account, but disable it. And then all you have to do is set up an alert for whenever that admin account tries to log into anything. If that account has no legitimate use on your network, it's just like the active defense stuff. Nobody's going to find it unless they're malicious and they're looking for it. So there's some rock simple ways that you can take advantage of the honeypot approach that are going to be crazy fast indicators of compromise. Did you have any luck with the GPO? Sorry?
I said I have it up on my system right now.
Do you know what the name of it is?
So basically, there's 2 well-known accounts that Microsoft added. It's the NT Authority Local Account, NT Authority Local Account, and Member of Administrators Group. You just need to deny access to this computer from the network to those accounts. It's not a separate GPO. It's just
a couple of accounts.
Use your right to sign.
So what I'll say here for the talk, because I know we're on the video and I'm here toward the end, is also if you don't mind sharing that out with me, I can add it out here in the slides later on. But once you get Laps up and running, awesome. This is a fully interactive BSides. Thank you. NT Authority Local Account and NT Authority Local Account and Member of Administrators Group.
Yeah, all you need to do is deny access to the or deny access across the network in the user right assignment.
What was your name?
Edward Yates.
Edward. Everybody give Edward a hand. Thank you. That's what I like. Give back. So wrapping up here for the day, it's still fundamentals, folks. When we look at these identity-based attacks, people going after local creds, going after admin creds, it's the basic, simple stuff that's going to shut down the attackers. Now, you can buy the fancy tools, you can buy the Blinky box. I think there's value in some of that. Don't break the bank, especially not out of the gate. Do a little bit of prevention, so system application network hardening. Put in some logging and monitoring controls using those cheat sheets, and spend some time on not just end user security awareness training, but anybody who has IT or security responsibility, train them on how to use the technologies and execute the processes you expect them to do. We do not understand how to do this stuff the day we're born. Everybody learns. And so take time to train these people, whether it's peer-to-peer, whether it's a class. don't overlook the importance of training the IT security folks. Here at the end, I always keep resources in there if there's like further reading, tools that I haven't referenced elsewhere. A couple of things I did want to mention. I did a talk in Columbus a couple of years ago on performing OSINT gathering on yourself. It's on Iron Geek's YouTube channel, because he was doing all the, Adrian Crenshaw, he was doing all the videos at the conference that year. I've got a link to that YouTube video here if you wanted to watch that. And I also have a Pluralsight class that's 5 hours on doing open source intelligence gathering. Look up people who will give you that 1 month free to Pluralsight. That 1 month is plenty of time for you guys to consume that information. And the Intel Techniques website I mentioned, Michael has a tool out there called Buscador, which is like Kali Linux for open source intelligence gathering. It's a VM, he keeps tweaking it. It's pretty sexy. I'm digging it so far, but I'm still trying to get my head around it. I did have to tweak the last version I downloaded to get some of the tools to work. But if you want to automate some of the open source intelligence gathering and you like the self-contained virtual machine approach, Buscador is really, really cool. Links to some of the other tools, including the Common Sense Security Framework. I told you I've been doing this for a while. That's my walk, don't run framework. I've got a whole methodology based on all my consulting days about what really makes a difference in keeping bad things from happening. And it's a lot more broad than identity, but if you dig what we talked about here today, I think you'll dig that as well. We're at the end of the day, and to be honest, I got to hit the road to get back to Columbus. I am not a hard person to find. This is me. Corporate email address, I work for What Identity out of Columbus. I'm trying to get down here more often now that I'm at a shop that lets me travel more. LinkedIn, Twitter, I love talking about this stuff. I hope that's come across, so please reach out to me. And then SlideShare and SpeakerDeck are the two websites. I'm out there as Slondel. And then SlideShare's got my LinkedIn name. But you can pull down the slides from there. So thank you very much, and thank you to the BSides folks for putting this together. I really dig it. Hope you guys had a great day, and have safe travels back to wherever you're headed.
Thanks, Jerod.